just want to speak for a couple of minutes, and then we'll let you go, and thank you for your time here. But I want to bring your attention to the European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights, who issued a report, or published a report, in November of last year, which deals with anti-Semitism throughout Europe. They surveyed over 5,500 Jews in 8 countries throughout Europe, including the United Kingdom. And they didn't look at statistics with regard to anti-Semitism, because statistics are often not calculated correctly. Either people don't report anti-Semitic attacks, or they're not recorded in some countries. So we can't look at statistics as being a valuable tool to assess anti-Semitism in Europe. So what they did, they surveyed Jewish people and said, what do you think is happening in Europe in these times? And this report is 80-odd pages long. You can get it off from the internet. It's worth getting if you want to have a look at it. I'll repeat it again. It's the European Union Agency on Fundamental Rights. And I've been studying these reports for about 10 years. They're really important reports, and we should know about them if we can. But what this survey said is that 66% of those surveyed, those Jewish people surveyed, consider anti-Semitism to be a problem across the EU member states. 76% consider it has worsened over the last 3 years. 73% perceive online anti-Semitism has increased. 25% of Jews heard anti-Semitic statements in academia, compared with 14% in sport. That means the camps that Irene, the campuses, the universities are more anti-Semitic than sport, the followers of sports, football and rugby, which is quite a startling statistic. 46% of all those surveyed worried about becoming a victim of anti-Semitism, and 33% worry about physical attack. 23% avoid visiting Jewish events, and 27% avoid areas in their community. 14% of Jews heard Christians making negative statements towards Jews. 76% did not report the most serious offences they had experienced, and 27% of cases of cases of anti-Semitic attacks were perceived to be from someone with extremist Muslim views. 22% left-wing political views, and 19% extreme right-wing views. However, the Christian community still speak in terms of hatred towards Jews. One report by a worker within the UK, a Jewish worker, says this, and the report expounds on it. He said, "I once had anti-Semitic graffiti posted on my locker at work. It was nasty stuff, put there by a born-again Christian." We've got a lot of work to do, a huge amount of work to do, in the area of education of our brothers and sisters within the Christian community, particularly in churches like St. James, within summer camps like New Wine, where the Muslim Brotherhood is considered by one particular speaker as being a friend of the Coptic Christians in Egypt, and yet Israel are their danger. So we need to be on the ball in places like Greenbelt. Steve has got a table in Greenbelt this year, I think. You've asked to have one, and that's quite expensive. You know, if you feel like you want to donate to something to help Steve with the table there, it takes a lot of courage to do that, and he needs prayer as well. But we do have to do these things. And when we spoke about comforting Israel and supporting Israel in the way that we do, and the way that our heart is led by God to do, I think we need to do more. We need to do much more in the area of activism, because Israel is facing now criticism by the churches still today, as they have done throughout the centuries. And this criticism and vilification is increasing. We can't do anything about the Muslim community, I don't believe. I don't think we can do that much in the political arena, but we can affect Christendom. because we're part of Christendom. And we can speak out. And it's no good staying in your seats any longer in your pew saying, you know, I'm staying here because I might be able to change the pastor. The pastor is always more likely to change the person in the pew than the other way around. We have to stand up and be a voice. One of the things that I really believe that God is wanting us to do is to cover Israel this year. And an incident spoke to me, an incident that occurred in Sterot in 2005 on the 21st of January, when the rockets coming from Gaza were turned away from the Gush Katif community, which had been evacuated from Gaza, towards the people of Sterot. And rockets were being fired into Sterot and the surrounding kibbutzim at the rate of something like 100 a week. And I was down there when these rockets were being fired, at the time when there were few shelters. On this date in January 2005, a young girl by the name of Ada Abu Kassis, a 17-year-old, was walking from the shul at the end of Jerusalem Street in Sterot with her 11-year-old brother. And the siren went off, the siren of the rockets coming from Gaza, which is less than 2 miles away. When these rockets are fired, they are filled with all sorts of things, nails, poisons, chemicals that will burn. But the most devastating thing about them is the shrapnel that bursts into the air when these hit. This is shrapnel that I picked off the floor when I was walking along a street in Sterot when 3 rockets landed at the same time. And it was warm when I picked it up. And I can remember Ayala being killed by rockets. What she did when she walked with her brother after hearing the alarm and realizing that there were no shelters to go to, she threw her brother to the ground and lay on top of him. One piece of shrapnel hit her head and destroyed her brain. And she died. But I felt God speaking to me the later part of last year, after Margaret Buckley gave that word to me about the hour requires more than this. That God doesn't want us to comfort Israel. He wants us to cover her. In the same way as Ayala covered her younger brother. That we would risk our lives, our reputations. We would risk all to stand with the Jewish people in their time of need, particularly when our brothers and sisters in places like St. James, in New Wine, in Greenbelt and other places, and Hope University, which is the only Christian ecumenical university in Europe, that we should stand strongly with her and cover her when they're vilifying her. So I want you just to stand now and to pray with me that the church and certainly the pro-Israel believers would actually in this coming season get the strength and the vision to cover Israel in the same way as Ayala Abu Kassis did in covering her brother, and consequently saving his life at the expense of her own. And I just want to give you freedom to pray, and I'll begin to pray first of all. Father, I want to thank you for this gathering today. I thank you for our wonderful speakers.
Yes.
I thank you for our wonderful friends who have come here to this place to make a statement, not only in the natural realm, but in the spiritual realm, that we will continue to promulgate truth and fight lies in our nation. And that we will cover Israel and not just comfort her in these times. And that we would lay down our ministries, Father, to do the things that the prophets have called us to do, which is more than to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, but actually to see the Jewish people prosper in the way that you've promised, to return to the land that you promised them, and to bring about a blessing upon them, that they would stand strong in these times and not give in to men, but glorify God. And I pray that in Yeshua's name. If you want to just pray, just feel free to pray.
Father, we pray that you would give us courage in these days, Lord. And the world is turning against Israel. Lord, would you give us a boldness